I don't really like that one. You really have no dimension parameter. You just have to scale it from what the picture looks like. And that's the hard part, really trying to figure out if that's big enough. Is it too big? So what I did is I sat on it and I compared it to another chair. So I compared it to this, this chair prototype, and it's supposed to, all it's got to do is hold 200 pounds. He said, 200 pounds is what it's got to hold. Well, that's no big deal. And a 200-pound butt will sit there. It's supposed to be a stool. I think that's the right size. So I'm going to knock it down to probably 2 1/4, maybe 2 1/4. I really don't like that one, so I got to go hunt for another one. That's the next stop, is go out wood shopping. Yeah, I just don't like it's going to have a line there. It's just not going to look good. And so I'll opt for another blank, and this one will. I think that'll work. We'll see. I just don't want it to be rotten, and I don't want to have too many cracks in it. Let's see. Sometimes you just have to cut it first to find out. And this is such a junky little piece that there's no harm cutting it. I'm trying to get a live spot on it. A little live spot right there on that long side. No, this is just bringing the live piece inside the house, you know. I don't want to have exactly happen to this what happened to the other one, have the corner off. I'm not sure this is the right piece. Has to be on this long side, and there's no other way to position a live edge on that long side, and I don't really like all that anyway. I'm going to draw it on here and cut it, because I don't like the piece that much, and see if I was right about not choosing it. This is a part of a jacket. You know, the first cut that comes off, there's always a few cuts that come off the log. And this one just happens to be kind of flat. I just don't think it's the one for the job. It feels kind of light, to tell you the truth. Yep, that's the one I want. Okay, we got 2. That's all we need. To scale, that is the hardest part. Whether the seat has to be 15 inches wide or 22 inches wide or somewhere in between, you just don't know. And sometimes you go through the whole trouble of making something for a customer and you think you've got it nailed, and then suddenly they say, no, I think something else. But that is working with designers, you know, you never know. Designers are, they want what they want, and sometimes they don't know what that is. But you keep trying until you get them satisfied, and you can always sell this thing someplace else, and it's a good practice. You know, you've got lots of wood and time on your hands. In the position I'm in, I make first, ask questions later. And so now all I have to do is surface that in order to get it to the right thickness. That'll take a little while. Maybe first I'm going to look for some legs. I need 6 legs. And I'm assuming that I'm going to end up around 2 1/4, 2 1/2. Let's call it 2 1/2. I'm going to put that leg 1 inch inside the piece, 1.5 inches or so, because it's at an angle. And I want to be at 18, so I need 15 and a half inch legs. So 16-inch legs will do it. That way I can make them flat at the bottom. Let's find some 16. Well, I make all my legs about the same size for these stools. They all have the same borehole. I drill with one specific drill bit most of the time, and it's about 1.5 inches. It's about 1.5 inches borehole, and then it expands out a little bit from there, maybe another inch. It's a very light taper. It's not much of a taper at all. Now, these are all pieces that I've turned before. I like to use them up because it's easier to use a piece that you've already started on than it is to start a fresh one. So I have some of these that are ready for turning legs already. And some of these are better suited than others. I'm sure I can find enough legs in all this material that I have stacked out here.
If you like the videos, please subscribe. It helps me do more videos and bring more content to more users. Thank you.
Something always happens to at least one, and this grain goes crossways. I suspect this one won't make it. That one I probably won't even try. That's probably why I set it aside, is because of the grain direction. You see that grain? That grain runs this way.
Why'd you do that to begin with?
Well, this is a twisty tree, and a twisty tree means that the bark grew around the tree in that direction. It's really hard to find something to do with a twisty tree. So there's just very few items that are able to be made with that. And here's some nails, a little added bonus for this piece. That's probably another reason I didn't keep going on this one. Yeah. So that's probably out. This one's probably in. And this one's okay. This has got a crack down the middle. I'll probably use this top portion of it. That one I can use part of it maybe. All right, so I need to get 6 of these. Maybe I get 3 more longer. So I'm going to make some of these the right length right now, 15 and a half. Let's go with, I think 15 and a half is what I'm going to go with. I don't know. The customer said she wanted some of these stools. I didn't even know the customer before. Wasn't one of my regulars, but. This is the shaped leg I like. It has enough depth to get it fully in the hole I'm going to drill, and it is tapered enough so it doesn't look like a sweet potato. The reason I make legs the way I do is from just practice. You know, it's hard to turn 2 legs identical without just keep referring to the same leg over and over to try to get them identical. But I don't have to do that anymore. I just turn them to whatever size I need the first time. And set them in far enough so that they won't have one of 2 problems. One of the problems that legs have is wobble. And so you have to set them in far enough so that you get all of that part in and some of this part that's bigger. It's bigger taper. So that part keeps the wobble from happening. If you just put it in there with the part that fits, unless it fits really snug, you're liable to get wobble. And I always make sure that I take enough of that wood off there so that I have room for the resin. So these get all set in resin. And if they're not pointing the same direction, like sometimes happens, you can always take a little bit more off so that it has some wiggle. And then you can put a little wedge in there and prop it up to get it to the right angle so that you look at it this way and you look at it that way and they're both pointing the same way. And that is my idea of a great leg. And if it's longer, you just make this part a little further down and do the same thing. Caliper, it is not an electric one. It's just old-fashioned. You turn this knob here, and that is the size of my drill hole. And so that's what I want to make this at, so that it's a good fit. And this is a good size for the end of the leg. And how I kind of gauge that is when it's on the lathe, it's just about as low as I can cut with this cutting tool without actually hitting the stop on that side. And so that's kind of a gauge for me on that end. Just not a very swept gouge. You can get gouges that have a lot more sweep. That is a gouge also. So on the lathe, I'm not a officially taught lathe guy. So whatever you learn from me, you take with a grain of salt. Some of the things I do might be dangerous, so don't do what I do. But it's okay to look at what I do and see what happens when I do what I do. So I try to practice safe work, and this is a tool that is particularly fun to use, a lathe. It's big. This is about the fourth one I've had. I just keep wearing them out. And this is a jet lathe. It is really got a lot of power, and I had a little extension put on it because sometimes I want to turn longer legs, and I've got it kind of extended out way over my bed here, but it's still in solid position there, and I just leave it on all the time. Probably it's a vampire for power in some regard, I guess, and then I just throw the speed switch up, and I kind of, on legs, I never turn on anything but full blast. If it could go faster, I would want it to. So.
When do you determine which of these tools to use? You're saying one's a bolt,
Yeah.
Like...
I prefer this one because it cuts kind of three ways. You can cut in the very center of this curve. You can cut in the very center, or you can cut on this edge, or you can cut on this edge. And these two outside edges always stay a little sharper than the center because you kind of do most of your work in the center. But to clean that up in order to get a good smooth surface afterwards, you can just rotate it a little bit and use that sharp leftover edge on either side here with the big flat one. Makes really a good cleanup on the leg.
Gotcha.
And for these little guys, I'm not really good at turning with these. I know how to do it, but these tend to roll in your hand when you don't do it right, and they roll in my hand a lot, so I know I have a lot to learn. And I like to use these on the inside of bowls for removing material pretty fast. The little one, gets into little spots, and the bigger one gets into a little bit more aggressive cutting. And I made one that's really super long, like 4 feet long. I don't know what I did with it, but I was doing a bowl that I needed a really long tool, and I guess you can make them any size. There's all kinds of different size tools to use. This is a little scraper that has a kind of a good edge for doing stuff on the inside of bowls and stuff. And then there's this guy here that has a round cutter for cutting inside areas where you can cut inside a bowl. That's really kind of cool. This is a little parting tool. It's got a V at the top, and it's good for separating two pieces of wood, any place you want to get in between and make a a little design even. You can use this edge to just make a little mark here and there. It's kind of cool. Another parting tool. It's very sharp on the end, and it's real good for coming in that way. And this is a bigger scraper. It's really heavy, so it doesn't vibrate much. The weight of it really helps to keep it from vibrating. And here's a smaller scraper. It vibrates a little bit more, but it can kind of easier to handle. On the big bowls and stuff, things tend to move around. So I have a rubber pad that I've put under the lathe that is one of those horse pads that are made of used tires. And they're like 4 feet by 6 feet. And that really helps stabilize the lathe so it doesn't bounce around so much. I mean, it feels like it's kind of rocky right here, but all that gets dampened when you have a consistent pressure on it. Yeah. Let's turn one from scratch. Are you going to help? Huh? Hey, dude, you want that, don't you? Yeah, well, I'm going to work with it first. Now the mess starts. That you can put this tool rest and you can kind of get an eyeball on where your leg straightness lies by this straight line. And so if you want it to be a sweet potato shape, it's not going to correspond much to this line. But as you can see right through here, that line is pretty good. And this is the taper to go back, and this is the taper to come down. But right in here is almost a straight line, and that's why I like my legs like that.
Cool.
Once I figure I've done all the damage I can with the sharp tool, I move to 100 grit. And I like this fabric-based sanding media because it doesn't rip in my hand, and it's probably maybe more dangerous if it gets caught on there, because it won't rip and disappear. It'll just kind of pull you in. So I don't use a glove on the sanding hand most of the time because of that reason. I want it to be able to just slip out of my hand and flip around and not pull me in with it. I've probably done 1,000 legs, and this is the safest way I can do it. So after I do the 100 grit, I go to the 180. I was going to go to 220, but they were out of 220, so I opted for the 180. And it takes off all of those marks pretty well when it's spinning. And any marks that it doesn't take off, I'll take off later with the random orbital sander. When I'm positioning my tools, I try to position the tool so that I have room for my hand to fit on there, and I like to put my hand on both sides of the tool rest. Reason is I can hold the tool right there. I'd like to have enough room to put my hand on both sides of the tool rest and be able to work it in there. And I kind of, how much pressure I put on it is determined by my thumb. I just kind of push it in and use my thumb to push that pressure across, holding this so that my thumb has something to push against. This is what I'm pushing against, is this piece of steel right here. And what I'm trying to avoid is digging in and digging in further than I can can remedy it.
There, but-
Yeah, you have to come into it really slow, especially when you have a square chunk. I know it's real easy to turn these small legs, even from a square chunk, but you have to really start off slow because this edge is coming around like 1,200 times a minute. And this is what you're going to be cutting on the first go. So you just have to just take that edge off. Once you've taken this edge off, it gets easier, and the closer you get to being round, the easier it gets. So you can take these things down pretty fast. I think you go, if you're turning, you go as fast as you can safely. That is lathe work. It's probably the most fun tool to use in the shop. You get things done really fast. It's real gratifying to know that if you screw up, you can just put another piece on there and you can be right back where you were in a matter of a minute.